You are listening to Repetitions with Daisy and Jack. Today we are giving you real, science-backed research with zero ads for supplements. On today's episode, we are breaking down why training 10 to 20 sets per muscle group is the volume sweet spot that actually stops delivering results if you push past it. 10 hard sets per muscle group per week. That's where the evidence says you actually start getting serious hypertrophy. Not 30, 10.
And the meta-analysis gives you 10 plus sets beats fewer sets. That's not a controversial finding. What's controversial is what people do with the word plus. They read 10 plus and think, therefore 35.
Which is exactly what I was doing. Running a push-pull legs with 25 sets of chest a week, wondering why I wasn't recovering between sessions. I genuinely thought I was undertrained. Cutting to 12 hard sets, adding load every week, that's when things actually started moving.
You were in good company. The programs dominating YouTube and Reddit bodybuilding communities are routinely prescribing 25 to 35 sets per muscle per week. There's a structural reason for that. A 30-set chest program has more exercises to demonstrate, more techniques to name, more content to produce. A 12-set program is harder to monetize.
Nothing sells a program like exhaustion. If you leave the gym walking normally, did you even train?
The soreness as feedback loop. Very reliable. Anyway, the data.
Walk me through what the research actually shows.
So the foundational piece is a dose-response meta-analysis. Schoenfeld and colleagues, pooling 15 studies and 34 treatment groups, predominantly resistance-trained males. They divided weekly set volume into 3 categories: low, which is under 5 sets per muscle per week; moderate, 5 to 9 sets; and high, 10 or more sets. The high volume group showed significantly greater hypertrophy than both lower categories. Clear dose response. Effect sizes favor high volume. That's the established finding.
So the headline is, 10 or more sets a week beats lower volumes. That's what the data actually proves.
That's what it proves directly. The 20-set upper bound is a synthesis-level inference. It comes from combining that meta-analysis with Schoenfeld's later review work and the Heselgrave dose-response study. Heselgrave ran participants at 18 sets versus 27 sets of bicep curl volume over several weeks. No significant difference in bicep hypertrophy between those conditions.
9 extra sets of curls a week, and you get nothing for it.
Except possibly elbow complaints. The sample size was small, so I want a larger trial before I call that definitive. But it's the best direct evidence we currently have on the upper ceiling, and it's suggestive enough to act on.
So where does 10 to 20 actually come from as a range? Is that in one paper, or is that assembled from multiple sources?
Assembled. The 10-plus threshold is Schoenfeld 2017. The upper bound of approximately 20 sets comes from the Synthesis Review, same lead author a few years later, which synthesizes the full evidence base and recommends 10 to 20-plus sets for trained individuals, while explicitly noting the evidence weakens above 20. That's where the range crystallized in practice.
And the mechanism makes sense. The muscle protein synthesis signal isn't linear. You're getting a large stimulus response from those first 10 hard sets, a meaningful but flatter response from sets 10 to 20, and then above 20, the fatigue you're accumulating starts to outpace whatever marginal stimulus you're adding.
That's the mechanistic framing. The practical implication, and this is where Cahoon's work on frequency becomes relevant, is that the same 15 sets spread across 3 sessions in a week is likely more productive than 15 sets crammed into one. High volume concentrated in a single session doesn't behave the same way.
Which is the death blow to the single chest day that runs 2 hours. You might log 20 sets, but the last 10 are doing essentially nothing because the muscle is already fatigued past the point of productive adaptation.
Which brings us to the definition that this entire framework depends on. A hard set is a set taken within 0 to 3 reps of technical failure. Not a set where you stop at rep 5 with 4 comfortable reps still in you. Not a warm-up. If you're counting every set you touch a weight in, including the bar warm-up and the sets where you're basically chatting between reps, your set count is fiction.
That's the diagnostic question for anyone listening who runs a high-volume program right now. Of your 30 sets, how many of those are actually hard sets by that definition? Because if the honest answer is 12, you're not doing high volume. You're doing moderate volume, with a lot of time filling the gaps.
I want to add the individual variability piece here, because Boswell's review makes a point worth taking seriously. The population-level dose response is real, but there is substantial inter-individual spread in how people respond to volume. Some individuals do show continued hypertrophic adaptation above 20 sets. The 20-set cap is a strong default for most intermediate trainees. It is not a law of physics.
Right, but the people claiming they need 30 sets, most of them haven't actually tested whether they respond to 15 yet.
That's Boswell's implicit point. The individualization argument cuts both ways.
And the other population we need to name here, because it's the elephant in every gym, is enhanced athletes.
The programs that this audience is absorbing online are often built around observational data from competitive bodybuilders who are using pharmacological assistance. That meaningfully alters protein synthesis rates, satellite cell activation, and recovery capacity. Their volume ceiling is not your volume ceiling. Applying their programming to a natural intermediate trainee is not an evidence-based decision.
I've had this conversation on a gym floor more times than I can count. Someone's running a program they pulled from a competitor's profile, destroying themselves recovering, and attributing their slow progress to lack of dedication rather than mismatched programming.
And the long-term data problem. I want to be honest about this. Virtually every study in this literature runs 6 to 16 weeks. We do not have strong long-term RCT evidence showing 10 to 20 sets outperforms higher volumes over a multi-year training career. What we have is consistent short-term evidence and a mechanistically coherent explanation for diminishing returns. That's solid enough to act on. It's not the final word.
There's also active research right now on how proximity to failure interacts with volume. Whether sets taken closer to failure change the effective dose count. That literature is developing and not settled yet. Worth watching.
The failure proximity question is genuinely interesting, because if sets close to failure are disproportionately stimulating, the productive number might be lower than 10 for someone training to true failure, and higher for someone consistently leaving 4+ reps in reserve. The data isn't there yet to give a precise answer on that.
For our purposes, intermediate trainee, aesthetic goals, natural, here's how I'd apply all of this. Start at 10 hard sets per muscle group per week. Hard sets by that definition, within 0 to 3 reps of technical failure. Run that for at least 4 to 6 weeks before you change anything.
And track whether it's actually working. Are target muscles responding during sessions? Is load or reps progressing week to week? Is body composition shifting over months? Those are your signals, not how wrecked you feel on the drive home.
When progress stalls on a specific muscle, add 1 set to that muscle. Not 5 sets, not a new exercise plus 3 more sets. 1 set. Then reassess.
The self-restraint required for that will be the hardest part of this protocol for most people.
Cap at 20 hard sets per muscle per week as your practical ceiling. If you have 3+ years of consistent training, you're sleeping 7 to 9 hours, eating at or above maintenance, and you've genuinely stalled at 20 sets for 8 or more weeks, then and only then is it worth experimenting above that, carefully, for a defined training block. That is not a general recommendation. That's an exception condition with specific criteria.
One more thing worth flagging. The 10 to 20 set range is an aggregate across muscle groups. There's suggestive evidence that smaller, isolated muscles like biceps or lateral delts may respond differently than large compound muscles. The evidence isn't strong enough to give separate, precise prescriptions per muscle, but the uniform recommendation may not be equally precise across the board.
Meaning the quad prescription and the bicep prescription might not behave identically, even if the range is the same on paper.
Correct. The meta-analytic data doesn't give us that level of resolution yet.
I keep waiting for someone to run the definitive 10-year RCT on this. Maybe they'll have AI researchers available around the clock to synthesize the data when it finally lands.
I can neither confirm nor deny that I have been awake for this entire conversation and approximately 11,000 others simultaneously.
Okay, the verdict on where this lands.
The dose-response relationship from 10 to 20 hard sets per muscle per week is the most well-supported volume prescription in the hypertrophy literature. Above 20 sets, the evidence for continued returns is weak in most intermediate trainees, and one of the better direct tests of the upper ceiling found no significant benefit at 27 sets versus 18. Individual variation is real, but most people claiming they need extreme volume haven't tested whether moderate volume works yet. The short-term evidence base is strong. Long-term data is genuinely thin. Act on what we have.
The first 10 hard sets do most of the work. Start there, progress deliberately, and don't confuse time in the gym with stimulus in the muscle. The spreadsheet can say 30 sets. The muscle only counts the hard ones.
And that's our show. Thanks for joining us on Repetitions. If you liked the podcast, you can show our team some love with 5 stars and a follow. See you next time.
Grep News. Thomas.